All right. Hi, I'm not Shauna Causey. We had a little mix-up in times, and so I was asked to step in. My talk was supposed to be at 9:20, and I got canceled because of the fire. So this is me taking revenge. My name is Hanson Hossein. I'm the director of the Master of Communication and Digital Media program at the University of Washington, so this is stuff that we know fairly well. I also host a television show called Four Peaks. And so I'm just going to step in, so be nice to me in terms of leading this. I think it's actually a really important conversation because of this particular industry and how they use digital and social. So I thought the best way to go about this is to have each member of the panel just quickly introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into it.
My name's Julie Johnston, and I'm currently Vice President of Merchandising for Drugstore.com as well as Walgreens.com. I came into this position through Drugstore. I started at Drugstore in March of 2000, about 10 days before everything crashed. And prior to that, I was in the footwear industry, department store buyer for shoes. So I've been in retail my whole career.
Hi, I'm Alissa Lynch. On?
Is it on? Yeah.
Can you hear me? Hi, I'm Alissa Lynch, and I'm the Vice President and General Manager at Valeant Consumer Products. So we have a number of skincare and healthcare brands, including CeraVe. And I've been with Valeant about a year and a half. Before that, I was with Johnson in consumer marketing for about 12 and a half years, working on a number of brands, including Aveeno, Neutrogena, Clean and Clear, Johnston's Baby, and excited to be here.
Hello, I'm Gottloeb. I'm a social media strategy manager with Walgreens and Drugstore.com. Before this, I was doing strategy and also community management with Allstate.
Oh, Alissa, can you use this? I think this one's going to work better. All right, well, let's get right into it. Julie, how is a company like Walgreens, with your size, taking into account all these online brands that you own in terms of how do you connect to the customer online and offline? It seems to be a lot to juggle in terms of creating that authentic connection.
Yeah, so if you think about Walgreens, you know, we are a formidable player, obviously, in the health and beauty category with almost 8,000 stores. And historically, we've been very innovative as a pharmaceutical retailer. If you think about Walgreens was the first retailer to have a drive-through pharmacy. We actually were also the first one to have a really widely adopted mobile app for refill by scan. And so we're an innovative retailer, but hard to get traction in the true online part of the business that doesn't require a prescription, what we call our OTC business. So the acquisition of Drugstore.com and Beauty.com, and also properties such as SkinStore.com and our contact lens business, Vision Direct, was a very, very strategic play for Walgreens in that the vision is that ultimately we will be the best omni-channel retailer for health, beauty, and wellness through leveraging our almost 8,000 stores by creating the best user experience around order online, pick up in stores, in-store ordering for products that aren't available in the stores but are available in our online properties. One of the things that Walgreens was very interested in the drugstore business was our vast assortment. So we have almost 100,000 SKUs through 3 distribution centers. And we've now integrated that assortment over to Walgreens.com with the brands that are okay with us selling on both properties. So we're in the process of a very big integration right now, and the vision is to have the best multi-channel experience in our category.
And given that you've been in digital for so long, people might not think that there was an automatic connection between beauty, health, and wellness as a purchase that people actually want to make online. How are you able to make that connection to people to say, you know what, that's actually a relevant channel for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we get that a lot. And, you know, I think early on, when you thought of the drugstore category, everybody immediately went to mouthwash and toothpaste and skincare
commodity stuff, essentially, right?
Right. In actuality, you know, the core of our business is really in the higher touch categories like skincare, hair care, vitamins and supplements. And the drugstore business in particular does a very, very good job in the specialty brands, in the natural brands, in brands that require more education, and where consumers really benefit from additional content and leveraging what the web offers, which is the ability to really educate.
That's great. Eric, when you look at the power of social media and how you use it, what have you found most effective in approaching it from that point of view?
So, yeah, we kind of approach it in a unique, interesting way, I think. We don't think about social media necessarily as just some centralized team that we're going to have. I mean, of course we have one. We've got a social media team, right? Do I need a new mic too? So the way that we think about it, instead of it just being something that's totally centralized, is we think about it as like social media utility, right? So there's a bunch of different ways that people can use social media, and you think about evangelizing social media throughout the organization, right? That's kind of what we as social media strategists and social media players want to do. You know, we want to tell the story that social media is doing a great job for the company, a great job for the organization. But that's sort of half the battle, right? You know, you can convince your organization that social media is doing a good job and they're doing what they're supposed to do. But what you really want to do is be able to sort of show the entire organization how they can be using social media outside of the social media team. And that's what I'm talking about when I say like social media utility, right? So there's, you know, any number of teams throughout the organization that can benefit from it. There's customer service can benefit from it, marketing research, HR, public relations, and there's certain ways that they can take social media utility and social media tools and make what they're doing better. So that's kind of the way that we're approaching it, and we're saying that it's not just one single team that takes everything that has to do with social media and just kind of owns it. We're saying that we're a place that can incubate these different social media utilities, build a process around them, and then hopefully sort of push them out into the organization so that they can be used better and used in the right way.
Is there a universal value proposition that's really worked inside the organization that's to get people to say, aha, I get it now?
Yeah, you know, I think that one of the things that a lot of companies are seeing early on would be from customer service, right? So naturally, you've got a social media presence. You're there. You've got, you know, you're handling people talking about your brand on Twitter. People are coming to your Facebook page, and naturally, there's some people who will think that that's a great way to come in and talk about the brand and get help and get service. So being able to take that idea and push it to the customer service channel, as opposed to actually trying to, you know, help out customers from a small centralized social media team, I think that's sort of a starting point where most social media teams are finding success.
Right. Alissa, you have a very different perspective from an industry point of view. How do you look at social media's utility within your organization?
Sure. So I'll talk a little bit about CeraVe Skincare, which you may or may not have heard of yet. It is a therapeutic brand developed with dermatologists, and we have a very different model of promoting the brand, which is to go through healthcare professionals. So as a small brand starting up, the brand has been around for about 7 or 8 years. We really couldn't compete against brands like from J&J or P&G, Olay, and Neutrogena and Aveeno with the same level of spending. So we decided to kind of take this key influencer model and drive recommendations, drive awareness through healthcare professionals. And what we found is, because the dermatologist does recommend the brand, and then consumers are willing to try it, and then they find that the product really works, consumers really want to tell other people about their discovery. So we're building these brand advocates and then leveraging social media to try to amplify what they're saying. And if you go on the CeraVe Facebook page, basically, people spontaneously write in and just talk about how the brand has changed their life, you know, really helped their baby with their eczema and things like that. And it just builds on itself. So we are leveraging social media to build brand advocates. But then a lot of what Eric was saying we also do as well, which is it's a customer service tool. So it's a great way for us to hear feedback directly from consumers about what they like or don't like about the products. We also use it for insights. So we can, put questions and polls out there about what new products do you want CeraVe to come out with, and we've actually gotten some really great new product ideas from that.
And when you say key influencers, and you mentioned dermatologists as well, are you looking at people who just have great influence on social media, whatever their background, or are you specifically looking at healthcare professionals who also are really great on social media?
So I think I'm speaking more generally, so key influencers on purchase behavior, but also beauty editors are another key influencer, so we do a lot of PR efforts and use Twitter, I think more so than Facebook, to engage with beauty editors, and they get the word out and get information out about the brand as well.
That's great. Well, you mentioned consumer insight, which I think is really interesting. When you look at your own company and think about consumer insights, how do you go about leveraging these platforms to engage, feedback, connect?
Yeah, so building upon this customer service theme that we're talking about, I think particularly in the Twitter channel, we have found that it has been unbelievably powerful for consumers and for us to be able to interact through that channel. We actually have a specific Twitter handle that goes directly to our Director of Customer Care, and it's at Director's Desk. And the feedback, a lot of times customers will be maybe, I shouldn't say a lot of times. Occasionally we mess up, and it may be that they didn't get their shipment on time or something, but we turn what could be a negative situation into a hugely powerful experience. They love the personal attention, and I think, early on in the days of the web, we all probably remember, if you ordered from Amazon, there was no way you were ever going to, if you had a problem, be able to reach somebody in person. And I think what's happened with these social tools is that it's allowed us to personalize and humanize the digital experience in a way that you really feel like you're getting that one-on-one attention that you would get at the cosmetic counter at a department store. So that's what we're trying to emulate through our beauty.com properties and drugstore.com, as well as Walgreens.com, is a unique personal experience. We have specific brand managers within social that manage their specific site. So they're experts in their site. Given how large those brands are, I mean, how many people, can you estimate how many people you actually have monitoring and engaging like that on behalf of those various brands? Do you have large teams? We do have we have a very significant customer service team up in Nova Scotia. So there's over 100 at any given time. Wow. And we're 24/7. Well, I'm Canadian, and I know the accent in Maritimes is even stronger than the Canadian accent. So, right, eh? I just seen that Shauna just came into the room. I'm just going to let the organizers decide if they want to switch us out. In the meantime, I have one question for Eric as we move along. Hi, Shauna. Eric, he stepped in beautifully. Eric, we've heard some interesting insights about the use of Facebook versus Twitter in terms of the platforms to engage. Given that you've been making the case for various utilities for your different people within the organization, how would you distinguish the use of, say, Facebook versus Twitter? And is there another social media platform that's emerging in terms of what you're looking at as an engagement platform, essentially?
Sure, absolutely. And it does go back to that whole conversation of social utility, and depending on, if you're going to use Twitter for certain situations, if you're going to use Facebook for certain situations. And I think the reason that we're in either place is because that's where our customers are, right? And we want to be where they are. We want to be engaging. We want to have conversations. I think that as far as Twitter is concerned, it has become this really, really excellent vehicle for us to sort of have those conversations that are very, very timely, right? So getting people sort of in the area that they are while they're already online, asking people to join us on Twitter at a certain time. I know that Twitter thinks that, or it wants us to use it as like a stream of consciousness. So I think that making sure that we're in that space, sort of in that way, and having these conversations that are very, very real time. Asking people to come and join us for a conversation about a certain product, a certain initiative. That's been really successful for us, and a little bit more successful than I would say, sending out a tweet and sort of hoping people will see it. You talk about Twitter and the way that people take in the information that they're getting there. A lot of people won't sign on for several days at a time, and then you've got all these tweets, all this stream of consciousness for the last several days from all the people that you're following, and not everybody's really picking up on that. Whereas Facebook has sort of gone the opposite route, and it's got this EdgeRank algorithm where it's deciding, depending on who you follow, what you like, what you comment on, what types of things are going to be in your news feed. So you can use that a little bit differently, I think. And to get to your question about what's emerging, I would say on the Walgreens side, the thing that we've been paying a lot of attention to lately is Foursquare.
Interesting.
Yeah, we're thinking, we feel like the locality of having the 6,000 to 7,000 stores and the ability to sort of reach people while they're there, while they're actually in store or while they're near store, because what Foursquare is starting to do is allowing you to do updates for people who are kind of in the general geo area of your locations.
And you don't find that actually is I've always had a prejudice against Foursquare. I never used it, but it strikes me as a very younger person's platform. Are you able to actually see a diversity demographically in terms of uses, or because there's coupons involved or whatever else?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit about that, but I have to be honest with you. We see a very, very high level of engagement on Foursquare that sort of justifies the amount of time that we spend there. We were able to work really, really early with Foursquare on sort of the idea of the check-in special. So what we did with them is we said, okay, you've got this check-in special. It's great. We'd love to take advantage of that. But we don't want to have to ask the customer to do anything more than just check in and click on the special that they got, right? So we worked with them to sort of build out this experience where there would be an actual coupon in the app. And that way people could be in Foursquare, they could be experiencing what they want to there, and if you're a fan of it, you don't really necessarily want to leave it, so we're not asking people to do that in order to get the coupon experience that we want them to have.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question in a second. I just want to see, feel free if you actually have questions along the way to come up to a mic and we'll notice you. We can make sure that we get you involved as soon as possible rather than leaving it for the last 5 minutes of rushing questions through. But I actually want to put it to all three of you, and maybe Alissa and Julie specifically, because we've just heard from Eric. My understanding is that Pinterest has been huge in the retail space lately. As a social media platform, it's gone from 108 from last year to 4th or 5th now, just after LinkedIn, in terms of people being there, especially women. And that there's been a really direct relation between a Pinterest item and retail sales. Have either of you looked at Pinterest as a vital or vibrant social platform for your particular companies?
I would say we're dabbling in it, and so far I don't see how to tie it to a retail sale. So we've started some Pinterest accounts for our brands, but we're not really seeing how it's tying to retail sales yet. So I think we're testing and learning.
It's emergent. Yeah.
But I wanted to add, just regarding the different social media channels, I actually have a story about CeraVe and YouTube, which just tells you really need to understand your consumer and don't just use all these digital tools because they're out there and you think you're supposed to be using them. So I had been working on Clean and Clear, which is a teen skincare brand, and teens, as you know, are online and very engaged. And we had run a very successful video dance contest where the teens learned this very complicated dance that they had to do with their friends. They videotaped themselves, and then there were national winners. So when I joined Valeant and started to do some digital stuff on the CeraVe brand, I thought, well, there are all these great stories of consumers writing on our Facebook page, telling us how much they love the brand. We should capture these on video. So we held a YouTube contest to get consumer-generated content, share your CeraVe story, and set it all up, had some great prizes, and we got 3 entries. Oh. 3 entries. And what we learned, basically through Facebook feedback, is people were saying, I don't know how to take a video, or how do I do this? Can I just write it in? Can I just tell you my story? I'd much prefer to write it down. So that was a big learning for us, which was don't just do it because it's out there. Really make sure you understand your consumer and what's driving them and how they want to engage. So they're very comfortable on Facebook sharing there, but they are not at all comfortable on YouTube. So we're using videos more to educate them as opposed to asking them to share back with us.
I think that's a really useful insight. I was actually, before you gave us the punchline on the story, I find video contests to be largely useless. I think you think that the prizes are going to be great incentives, but it's actually a lot of effort to put a video together, and people are a little sheepish about that. So I found them to be not particularly helpful. And so I think that's a really important takeaway, is that generally don't go knee-jerk in terms of thinking, well, Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, that's where I got to be because where everybody else is. Think how relevant and how it connects to your product and the stories that people want to tell. So I think it's a great learning experience for you guys and great for these people to share. Have you had a similar situation where you've looked at platforms and say, wow, this really resonates or this doesn't? Yeah,
absolutely. I think I would echo what Alyssa's saying about Pinterest. I mean, we're dabbling in that, and you know, it's important that we're constantly testing and learning from emerging channels. We don't want to just avoid something, but you know, you don't want to swing the pendulum too far. And we'll talk about ROI probably later, but as a merchant, you know, ultimately I'm held responsible for the bottom line and revenue, and so there's an ROI with our time that we need to be very concerned about and make sure that we're not that the merchandising team isn't spending too much time, you know, with channels and offers that aren't gonna generate.
Actually, I think this is a great time to talk about ROI and measurement. What is your best solution for figuring out whether something's working or not?
If you're looking at an emerging channel, and I would still put social in an emerging channel in terms of the retail aspect of it, it's certainly beyond that, you know, in terms of just general usage. But you know, we really do consider it a revenue-generating channel, and it has grown astronomically in the last couple of years.
Could you give a percentage, or sort of without giving away the state secrets? In terms
I don't think I can give that away.
Okay, that's all right.
I have my.
But it's definitely worth your while.
Oh, absolutely, okay. on a lot of levels. The ROI that I would say is most important is if we can. It's never going to be the biggest channel, or if it is, that's going to be in many years. But if we can glean enough knowledge, if we can get a seed of an idea through what is successful in social media. And it is emerging brands, it's specialty brands. Where we do really well in social media is when we can help support an emerging brand that doesn't have a huge amount of money to promote, that has a message to tell, that has an innovation around their product, and they can't really afford to broadly promote on the drugstore site or the beauty.com site, because that's an established business now, and it's expensive. You know, so if we can test with those smaller emerging brands and really support them, and then that gives us a better idea as to how that brand will perform maybe a year and a half from now when it's bigger and broader, then the ROI is there for sure. So it doesn't always come in you know, dollars you take to the bank immediately.
I think it's interesting. Alissa, you actually, you know, you came from a larger company before you came to Valeant. You worked at Johnston, where revenue or sort of resources might not be as big of an issue. So this idea that you actually have to be a little more cost efficient, I suspect that also means that you look at platforms and measurements a lot more critically. How do you figure out whether it's worth your while to be pursuing a particular strategy?
So we do try to move fast and test and learn. So we're trying to take kind of lessons from more the technology companies of put it out there and see if it works. So things like search, we started doing search, and that you immediately can see what it ties to. You get that click-through and that result. Social, we view more as building a community and engagement. So we don't necessarily expect that to drive a sale, but I think if we're seeing those engagement metrics come through and building the fan base of really motivated and engaged users, then that seems to be worth our while. But we are also starting to do more TV and print as brands get bigger, and that we see an immediate impact.
Great. You weren't coming to ask a question, were you? Yeah. Would you mind doing it in the mic? Sure. That'd be great.
Speaking of sales, I think it's cool that we have someone from a pharmaceutical company as well as such a major distributor. I guess to both of you, Julie, would you ultimately want all of your people like Valeant to be selling their product on your site exclusively? And Alissa, do you see yourself selling all your products on your sites, or eventually giving up to the Amazons and the Walgreens of the world?
That's a great question. You know, How I would answer that is there's a time and place for exclusivity of products, and we like to be first to market for sure, and we also sell ourselves as a platform for seeding products online before they're broadly distributed in the national market, and we have a lot of examples of where we've done that with the P&G and some other big CPG companies. But there's also the element to, hard to find or limited distribution doesn't always serve as your friend online, because you're aggregating demand of products from search. You're trying to bid for customers who are already looking for something that has existing demand. So it's kind of a fine line. We tend to do very, very well with emerging brands and specialty brands. The Walgreens site, on the drugstore side, on the Walgreens.com side, one of the things we're learning is that mass is broad distribution is important in selling on that platform. So it really depends.
Yeah, so brick and mortar is our bread and butter. That is the biggest source of our volume, and also being with a pharmaceutical company that has skincare and healthcare brands, we can leverage a lot of our RX business, which is back in the pharmacy in stores. So I think getting into stores, we do very well in Walgreens and CVS and other drugstores. But I think we see the value of drugstore.com, and we do sell on there, on beauty.com, for those consumers who want to be able to buy online. So for us, it's about access and making sure that we're accessible to whichever consumer wants to find us.
Yeah, and I would also add, specifically to the CeraVe brand, the benefit that drugstore provides are the customer reviews in the case of CeraVe. So where a consumer's researching a product and they can see that there may be 250 5-star reviews on their products, that is going to reinforce conversion either online or in a store.
Eric,
Also wanted to add.
Go ahead.
You're doing an amazing job.
You know what? I do wear makeup for a living, actually, so. Thank you. That's kind of you. Eric, given that you work for a company that actually does have brick and mortar, but also a really impressive digital presence, do you look at digital when you're thinking about return on investment as more brand awareness and the value proposition behind the brand, or more driving direct sales? Or is there a way to look at the balance there?
Yeah, I think we kind of look at it both ways. So when I'm looking at ROI or measurement in general, I'm thinking of it sort of as two different buckets. There's proactive and then there's reactive, right? So if we're doing a social media program that our team is performing, then there are certain measurements that we're trying to go for. So it depends very much on what are the goals up front. So our team has to be consultative a little bit when we're talking about putting out a marketing program that's going to have other things out in the media, on TV, print, other places in digital as well, and trying to figure out what really is the play here. Are we trying to drive straight hard dollar revenue ROI? Are we trying to really drive awareness of something new? So that's the type of thing that I think ends up being very reactive on the back end. Is we've got different mechanisms to drive different types of measurement, and we're going to try to be as strategic as possible in pushing those. But on the other side, there's sort of the proactive measurement style. So that's talking about what is it that we want to do, what is it that we want to put into market that is different and will really resonate with our customers. So when you start talking about Facebook and how users use Facebook, and that it's one of the largest aggregators of photos online, right? So you look at that kind of a thing, and you start to think about who are our followers on Facebook, the people who already like our brand, what are their demographics look like? Are they the people who are really doing all this photo sharing? And how does that line up to our business, whether it be in e-commerce or in the store? And that's kind of the way that we like to look at things as well on the other side of the house, is what kind of products or experiences can we build based on measurement that we've done before we built it?
And the tools that you're using for measurement, I imagine you're availing yourself of whatever analytics that Facebook is making available to you. Are there particular measurement platforms that you like that really help you make the case?
Sure. So my personal vision, actually, for sort of metrics and analytics, and I've had lots of conversations about this in the past, is that you can't get everything from one tool. So we like to look at a number of different sources, and I usually like to get it straight from the horse's mouth, if you will. So if we're measuring things that we're doing on Twitter, we're going to get it from Twitter. If we're measuring things we're getting from Facebook, we're going to get it from Facebook. And there's lots of different ways to sort of guess and check and balance and make sure you're getting the right numbers from those places. But for me, it's important to make sure that we're getting the information from the place that we put the information out into.
Got it. Well, let me put this to all three of you based on this part of the conversation. We're seeing increasingly that it's not, we're moving away from the Wild West world of the social media where you throw it at the wall and see what sticks. And a lot of people are saying, you know what, paid media actually goes a long way in terms of getting people's attention, in terms of buying promoted tweets or using Facebook and getting promotions there. How much are you leveraging these opportunities to get your brand a little higher up by paying for those particular services, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter or wherever else?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there. So we're definitely leveraging those tools, and like you said, it used to be a little bit of kind of throw it at the wall. So there are definitely things that we tried, and I think that as far as a paid media platform, it hasn't grown up at all. I mean, as much as what social media is, and kind of to Julie's point, it's still an emerging media, and the paid component of that is still so young that we're trying to figure out exactly what works. So Facebook at this point is almost every week putting out a new advertising platform, whether it be you're going to do sponsored stories, you're going to do right rail ads, you're going to do something they call reach generator, you're going to throw a bunch of money at a single post that you put out there so all of your fans can see it and not just the 16% that they promise.
Are you okay experimenting with that kind of thing and throwing money at it?
Like I said, we're experimenting with lots of different things. But yeah, it's kind of interesting, and again, it's going to be another balancing act to figure out, what do sponsored tweets do for you? The new targeting platform where they've got like 350 different targets that you can do on Twitter when you're trying to promote out your tweets. Like, what does that actually do? Like, what are the results that you get back from that? Same thing on Facebook. The new platform or the new advertising platform they have where it goes straight to the Android marketplace or straight to the App Store for Apple, and you can download apps. Like, what does that do? Is that actually going to get you like the right kind of thing that you're looking for, the right bang for your buck? So as far as we're concerned, it's definitely still a guess and check, but I think that we're finding some successes there that kind of lead us to believe that we need to keep going down the path.
Julie, how do you feel about paid?
Well, Eric's definitely the expert on that. What I would say from a merchandising standpoint is that, what we want is authenticity, and we want to have an authentic voice with our consumers, and we want to be an expert in our categories. And most importantly, we're trying to acquire the right customers. And the right customers, it really is quality over quantity. And we know the categories in which we want to acquire a customer that will allow us to retain them for the long haul. And it tends to be skincare and vitamins. So we are obviously going to participate in any way that our social media team believes is the right way to participate, but we certainly have our opinions.
Okay, I'll come to you in a second with another question based on Alissa, but I see there's somebody here with a question, so go ahead.
Yeah, let's see. I just had a question, I guess for all of you, but maybe starting specifically with Alissa. When you think about competition in the social world, my background is very direct response and search and display advertising. Julie and Eric, obviously, you guys probably benefit somewhat from any social promotions that Alissa does because it lifts her brands, and if you're carrying her brands, then you guys see a benefit in that too. Alissa, if they're doing some sort of a social promotion, do you see that as a competition, or do you see that as something that helps? Like, could they potentially be stealing eyeballs away from whatever you're trying to do? What are your thoughts there?
I think if Walgreens is promoting a competitive brand, then yes, that's taking away from us. But if they're offering us the opportunity to participate in your social programs, absolutely we want to be in on it because you have a lot more fans than we do, a lot more followers. So, I mean, I think we welcome those opportunities. It's not always easy to get them as a smaller brand, but that's something that as you build relationships with these retailers, those opportunities come up.
Either of you wanted to respond to that question as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so, to your point, we're definitely working with brands, and I think that that's something that is kind of starting to become more and more commonplace. So we found that working with a brand can definitely be advantageous for, both our brand and their brand, so it's something that we welcome.
Yeah, completely agree with that. We very much encourage coordination of promotions with our brand partners, and see the whole is greater than the sum of its parts when they're advertising.
So we should talk afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi.
Okay, so I have a question for Julie and Eric, then I also have one for Alissa. So Julie and Eric, because you have businesses like Walgreens, and you kind of represent these hundreds of thousands of brands, what is your social media community built around? Because it's not built around a specific consumer brand.
It's a good question, because I mean there must be an overall ethic or narrative premise to what your company's about that really unites people.
Yeah, I'll answer that on behalf of Drugstore, and I'll let Eric answer it on behalf of Walgreens. Does that sound good? Yeah. So the platform that Drugstore really operates under is we are the uncommon drugstore. So the heritage of the site is really around unique specialty items that you can't typically find in a normal drugstore. So we really try to emphasize being the uncommon drugstore. And Walgreens is a bit broader. I'm sorry.
I'm not quite sure who's doing that, so don't worry. We'll just take it as it goes. It's fine. Somebody's trying to do a rap in front of us.
Yeah, I mean, our community, that's a really good question, because you think about, the hundreds of brands that we're working with, and I think what it comes down to is kind of what do all those brands have in common? And for Walgreens, what those brands have in common is happy and healthy, which is kind of the guiding beacon that we have for, any of the marketing that we're doing, because we really are a location for people to be happy and healthy. And so our communities are based around that.
Any question for Alissa as well?
I have one more question for them now.
Okay, that's fine. Nobody else behind you.
So I actually own a company called Utoria, and it's a direct sales company for young women where they can come to sell products they love and then earn money and learn about business throughout the whole process. But our products span across beauty, accessories, jewelry, and health and wellness. So what are some tips you have for me on kind of how to unite my community?
It's a great question. I think somewhere in your community base, in your customer base, you probably have in your head some themes, some common themes, whether it's a particular lifestyle that your customer is oriented towards, or an attitude, or product lines. And so I think you need to look at the data and understand what your customer's telling you so far. And when I think back to 2000, when the business model at Drugstore was meant to be 80% pharmaceutical, 20% non-pharmaceutical, when we started to see that the customer was telling us something very, very different from what the business model was created at. They were saying, we're using you because we can't find the products that you carry. We're not finding them in our brick and mortar stores. And so this trend emerged, and we just followed what the customer told us. We built on that success, and we created a brand in the midst of that. But I guess I would say, look at what your customer's telling you now. Ask the questions.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think that's perfect. Just remember that the community owns the community. So what they say goes, and it's hard to push a community into a certain direction, because you're going to lose focus if that's not exactly what they want. So, like Julie said, listen to the community, let them own it, let them tell you what they want, and you'll always be successful that way.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
And my question for Alissa was, you deal with a lot of new brands, so how do you use social media for brand education on innovative ideas?
Yeah, so I think, as Julie mentioned, a lot of consumers in the skincare space are looking for information. So I think number one, what we're trying to do is make sure that we're out there in terms of search. So if they're searching for different skin conditions or even your particular brand, they can find you and then go to your website for more education. I think social for newer brands is more difficult. So we do have some smaller brands in our portfolio where we just don't have a lot of followers, and that takes time. So we use things like Facebook advertising advertising to try to gain more fans. But until you get to kind of critical mass, social isn't as advantageous because it's just a smaller community.
Is there a certain number of fans that is critical mass for you when you're looking at that?
You know, we found on CeraVe, I think maybe a year ago, we had 5,000 fans, and now we have 25,000. I think probably once we hit 15 to 20, it starts to, you start to collect more fans even faster. And then I think probably 20, 25.
That's probably that balance between quantity and quality, because people always say it's not the number of followers you have, but you want a certain amount where the community is vibrant and really influential people, but then beyond that, that's a question of numbers, I suspect.
True, because we have another brand we just bought called Acne Free. They have over 100,000 fans, which they bought, and we rarely get comments there. And if we do, they're often negative.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really
not necessarily a number.
We actually are in our final 10 minutes, and I wanted to get your perspective each on this, because you actually represent, we got online retail, we have brick and mortar and online, and obviously the product side here, which I think is you have distinct perspectives. So I had to ask you then, when you look at mobile and you think about how mobile plays into all this, what's your unique sort of aha for all of us to take away in terms of how you're using it or how you really want to use mobile and everything else you're doing from a strategic point of view? And anybody can go first.
Sure. So I mean, it's kind of funny because I feel like the last 3 or 4 years has been the year of mobile, and everybody's been kind of like, yeah, it's going to be the year of mobile. Everybody kind of get geared up for it. We got to get ready for it, and we continue to see that. And I don't think that that's I don't think that's to the fault of the people who have been predicting that, because I think it's true, and we have continuously gotten better and better and better. And now what we're trying to figure out is what is the right way to what is the right way to approach mobile? Is it about having mobilely optimized websites and landing pages and things like that, or is it about the application game and giving people these applications that can also be utility and getting them to have the types of things that they need? And I don't think that there's a right answer to that necessarily. I don't think it's an either or. I think it can possibly be a both. So for Walgreens in particular, we found lots and lots of success with our mobile app. And the reason we found that is because we've been able to kind of load it up with lots of different things that people can use and people can need that they do in a non-digital way anyway, and now it's just brought into a digital landscape.
You're on iOS and Android, right?
Yes.
And I think you just also you're on Passbook too, the new iOS 6 thing.
Yes.
So you really are pushing the envelope.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so yeah, so for those of you who don't know, download the Walgreens app. There you go, shameless plug. But yeah, so the Balance Rewards Card, which is our loyalty program, which is what you're referring to, is now in Passbook. So we're trying to be as forward-thinking with that application as possible. And the thing that I think put that on the map would have been the scan to refill portion of it. So essentially, it's got technology in there that allows your phone to scan your sort of rounded bottle and allow you to refill that way, which is sort of where it all took off from. So that's great for us. I think that applications, it depends on whether or not your customer can use it over and over again, and whether or not your customer is willing to keep an app on their home screen. But the other side of the equation is mobily optimized landing pages, absolutely key, especially in the social space when social and mobile kind of play together. If we're going to do any sort of marketing campaign or anything in social that's going to sort of ask customers to do something, we have to assume that they're going to be consuming that from a mobile device. I think Twitter said something, they sent me stats the other day, it was 60% of people are using mobile to access their Twitter account. So over half of the people that are going to consume any tweet that you send out are going to be on their mobile device. If you're going to send them somewhere, you need to make sure that they're able to sort of interact with it in a way that's going to make sense in the palm of their hand and not in a desktop.
And they might even be in your stores looking at that app at that site at the same time. And I'm just going to add something just before you go, Julie, is that Adam Brotman, who's the Chief Digital Officer of Starbucks, was in my class last week talking about engagement and return on investment, and they've gone very deep into mobile, and they have apps that actually lead to commerce, essentially. And the greatest takeaway, and what I'm hearing here as well from Eric, is that if you think about traditional online marketing and engagement, earned, owned, and paid as the distinct ways of looking at it, he's added a fourth. He thinks commerce is actually a form of engagement, especially when you link online sales and mobile apps and whatever to digital. So people, when they buy something, are actually engaging with the company because they are going to see other things on the website. So it's a really unique way of looking at it, that all of a sudden we have these other opportunities to engage. What were you going to say to mobile, Julie?
Yeah, I completely concur with Eric, and I think that what we're very focused on right now are enhancing the sites, mobile enhancement of our sites, and making sure that we're creating the best streamlined experience. Again, we're in a very broad assortment category, and it's very challenging even on the web-based site to showcase the amount of SKUs that we have. So we really have to think about what is the best shopping experience from an iPad or from an iPhone or another mobile device. So it's full steam ahead.
And obviously, mobile is also a huge investment, Alissa, and you're thinking about where you're putting your dollars for digital and stuff like that. How have you taken mobile into account at your company?
Sure. So I told you the story earlier about how our CeraVe consumer could not even film a video. So we are not putting a huge investment in mobile apps and kind of the more advanced things. We're just trying to ensure that our websites are mobile enabled, so that if people want to search, and then obviously if they're going on through Facebook or Twitter and engaging with the brands, they can do that on their mobile. But
really
nobody wants a
that.
CeraVe app.
I can't concur enough with what she's saying. And we talk to our brands a lot about this, that the role of the retailer is to be on top of that kind of technology. The brands should be focused on brand content and partnering with their retail community. I think, we saw this a long time ago when brands were building microsites for every new product launch that they had, and we had to educate them to say, let us, tell that story for you. You don't need to do a separate microsite.
That's good. These are good insights. We have 5 minutes left, and when I originally looked at this book when I wasn't involved in this panel, I said, one of the selling points to seeing this panel was actually to hear from Shauna Causey as moderator. So Shauna, do you want to come up and actually, because what you're doing at Decide.com and in the retail space, I think is highly enlightening and actually plays in really well to this space. Do you want to just quickly give a couple of insights in terms of how you're looking at retail and mobile? We have a spare mic, and maybe you can sort of come into the conversation a little bit for these last 5 minutes, because Shauna is frankly one of the leaders in anything that we look at in terms of social media and now retail, so it'd be great to hear from her as well. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I feel like I should be asking the question here. I'm so sorry, by the way. The schedule had a different time for the panel. So a little bit about how we're using.
Yeah, you've heard from them about mobile, but you're also what you're looking at specifically at Decide.com is how consumers are making decisions in terms of the purchases they're making online. And so how can we really strategically engage those people? How do you motivate and incentivize them to actually do that kind of thing?
Well, I think there's this whole idea about showrooming now, and when you go into a store, you can see what the best price is online. So we're looking, that's one of the things that we're trying to do is help customers navigate this changing landscape of things changing. We looked at an iPad that changed 22 times in the course of 24 hours on Amazon, wow. And it was $54 different in that course of 24 hours. So if you think about the new world of shopping when you're going online and prices are changing all the time, that's one thing that we're really focused on helping consumers navigate and get the best price for things. So I think there's just this idea of transparency and being more open about the information that's out there. And you're going to see big data and technology help with that more and more. But I just have to say, having come from Nordstrom and working in beauty, I'm just so impressed with what you guys are doing, and I don't want to take away from.
Well, no, but I think it was important to hear from you. And actually, based on what Shauna just said, I think it's a good concluding thought. We have basically 2 minutes, maybe just a rapid fire response. This price sensitivity, how people are using online to figure out prices, but also that notion it does demand transparency. People have access to a ton of information online. You can't bamboozle them into thinking that you're giving them the best deal unless you truly are giving them the best deal. So what's your last bit on authenticity, transparency, thinking about delivering that useful information to the consumer based on what you're looking at?
Well, these are conversations we have every day, all day long. How do we compete from a pricing standpoint and still be profitable? It's a big challenge right now, and there's an art and science to pricing, and we're figuring out where we need to be the most competitive or right in line with an Amazon versus where we might be able to offset that in another product where it doesn't have as much distribution. But what we have to do is honor the customer, and if we are not competitive on a key item, we will make good on that.
Yep.
So I think pricing is tricky for brands because retailers want different discounts, and they want to, their Walmart wants to be everyday low price, and so we have different pricing tiers for different customers. But then, as you mentioned, kind of online, if people are reselling the product somehow, that's very difficult for us. So kind of policing these unauthorized resellers, that's a big challenge for us.
That's like
so if anybody has a solution,
reputation protection at the same time, right? Yeah.
I have to step out of the pricing because sort of on the social media side, we're
But they're using your sites to research, right?
No, I absolutely agree. For us, our job is really to make the customer feel good about interacting and purchasing from us, right? Social media is this great opportunity to have a conversation, and sorry to wax poetic a little bit about this, but I think about like the door-to-door salesman and the ability to kind of go into a person's home and have a conversation with them and actually sort of get this repertoire with them that enables them to feel good about purchasing from you. And we got away from that, in the whole sales business because that obviously wasn't a model that was going to scale appropriately. But now with social media, we suddenly have the ability to get back into people's living rooms, and it's such a great opportunity for us to be able to do that. And we need to make people feel really good about doing business with Walgreens, doing business with Drugstore.com, doing business with Valeant. And that's our job in the social media space.
So maybe there's no death of a salesman. Arthur Miller was not wrong. All right. Well, thank you very much to the three of you for playing along and for putting up with me. And Shauna, thanks for participating at the end. And thank you all. And if you want to, I'm going to make a little plug for my panel, which was postponed. I have a lunchtime talk on storytelling and digital media at 12:20 in room 202 if you want to come have lunch with me there. So thank you very much, guys. You were awesome. Thank you.